Like many immigrant families, we arrived with hope, determination, and the belief that education was the pathway to opportunity. But what I learned very quickly is that navigating education in a new career isn't just about working hard, it's about understanding systems that aren't designed for you. And then the level of support that failure is okay. And the level of mentorship by their supervisors was just extraordinary. And I think it's just an entire system that needs to support our youth and be able to mentor them to understand that, yeah, there are challenges, there are points where we're not going to be successful, but here's opportunities and ways in which we could get better. And in the future, CTE becomes a backbone and how education connects to economic mobility. And strongest systems globally, we talked about Switzerland, there's Germany, increasingly there's regional models in the US that really don't treat vocational education as secondary.
You are listening to the Global CTE Podcast with your host, Sylvester Chisholm.
Welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Global CTE Podcast. I'm your host, Sylvester Chisholm. This is the place where I interview the best, the brightest, the movers, the shakers, and the innovators. Today is no different. We're starting our Women in CTE series as we celebrate Women all March, as we talk about the leaders that are shaping education and preparing future leaders for our workforce. Today, I'm super excited. My guest is Dr. Narineh Makijan. Okay, let me tell you a little about the work that she's leading. Okay, she's the Assistant Vice President and Chair of the Los Angeles Regional Consortium, where she leads ecosystem development across 19 community colleges in Los Angeles County. That's one of the largest coordinated workforce regions in the country. With more than 20 years of experience advancing counseling, workforce development, and CTE, Dr. Makijan's work sits at the intersection of equity, economic mobility, and systems design. She's also a faculty member at USC's School of Education, where she prepares future school counselors and champions early college dual enrollment in end-to-end CTE pathways. She's the author of Beyond the Algorithm, Human-Centered AI, a guide for reimagining student support in a tech-driven world. And her leadership philosophy is bold and human-centered, building coordinated systems that empower learners to discover purpose, gain real-world experience, and thrive in a rapidly evolving economy. Dr. Makijan, welcome to the Global CTE Podcast.
Thank you so much, Sylvester, for inviting me to be on your podcast.
The work that you all are leading at LARC is really incredible. So before we get too far into all of that, I ask this question to everyone, like, how'd you get here? What's the origin story?
Absolutely. So my story really begins long before my career in education and workforce systems. My family immigrated to the United States from Iran as part of first-generation immigrant family. Like many immigrant families, we arrived with hope, determination, and the belief that education was the pathway to opportunity. But what I learned very quickly is that navigating education in a new career isn't just about working hard, it's about understanding systems that aren't designed for you. As a first-generation student, you often become the translator, the navigator, the bridge between two worlds. You learn early how much access to information, guidance, and support matters, because without it, even capable students can struggle to find their way. And research does show that many first-generation students must often figure out educational pathways largely on their own, without inherited knowledge about how systems work. And truly, that experience shaped my entire career. It's why I became a counselor, because I knew what it felt like to need someone who could explain the system, not just judge your performance in it. And it's why my work eventually expanded into regional education and workforce leadership. I realized that helping one student at a time wasn't enough if the system itself remained difficult to navigate. So today, whether I'm working on regional talent pipelines, counseling frameworks, or human-centered AI in education, the mission is still the same. Build systems that don't require students to be insiders to succeed. Because when education works the way it should, it doesn't just produce graduates. It creates economic mobility, stability, and opportunity for entire families, just like the opportunity for my family who came here that was seeking that as well.
Wow, that's a very powerful story. And I love the personal connection to your work. the empathy that you bring to the system, like you said, not just working necessarily one-to-one with the student, but having that empathetic voice, making change at a systems level is very, very powerful. Can you talk to me a little about the exposure piece? Like how important is it for students to have exposure to the different career pathways so they can find themselves in the work? I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I think part of the challenge that we see in our educational system right now, as it relates to our students navigating it, it's the design. So the design is the problem, right? And so we have fragmented pathways, we have redundant programs, we have credentials without labor market power, then that we kind of prioritize 4-year degrees, then we shift to skills-based and back and forth. And we ourselves as educators need to align and design a system that works for the learner, that provides them opportunities, whatever that path may be, whether they're reskilling or adult learners or right out of high school, that they're able to navigate the system to be able to find a career pathway that aligns with their strengths, right? And that aligns with a specific career that's out there for them that will provide them economic mobility. So career and technical education is core to the work that we do as a regional consortium. But that doesn't just mean programs. That doesn't just mean non-credit, not-for-credit certificate to baccalaureate degrees that our community colleges offer. What that means is really intentional work around labor market data, what our region, Los Angeles, hyper-focused needs as it relates to what the workforce demands are. What are our employers saying the skills gaps are? What are their workforce challenges? And how do we really develop a pipeline that works for our learners at the core, because those are the individuals that we do all this work for, but also that have opportunity for earn and learn, apprenticeships, job placements, internships, micro internships. I mean, we can name it because we know that our students who have those opportunities are much more successful in having a career, having a position once they leave us. And so I think career and technical education pathways provide that opportunity. But on the flip side, as educators, as individuals who have these ecosystems, we need to align and design them to meet the needs of our learners, and not the other way around.
That's so well said. In so many cases, we spend a lot of time aligning broken systems. I'm curious from the work that you're involved in, give us some best practices on what does it look like to help create that alignment.
You know, it's a great question. And I think that's a question that everybody asks. It's how do we successfully do this when each institution, each county, city, state initiative has its own compliance, has its own accountability, has its own metric. And so what we've tried to do is really to bring together a region, to bring together all the key stakeholders, whether they're internal as our community college leadership and staff that do the work, the faculty that do the work, in partnership with our K-12s, with our 4-year universities, and also our external partners, our community members, our community organizations, our industry employers, as well as our county, city, workforce boards, economic development corporations, so on and so forth. So one of the ways in which we're able to do this is be at the table for those conversations. And I'm not saying it's perfectly going to align. We're going to figure this ecosystem out. But I think having authentic conversation about who owns what and how we could collaborate and align our initiatives to better serve our learners. Because at the end of the day, if you talk to any organization, if you talk to any leader in the state, everybody's goal is to serve our communities, to ensure they have economic growth and mobility in all capacities. And we have so many resources out there that go untapped. Why? Because it's hard to navigate them, right? And so the challenge has been, how do we get everybody to align on this shared goal and be able to streamline the resources, the opportunities, and those conversations so that we have a bigger impact on the communities that we serve.
I'm hearing communication, and collaboration is two critical things that you're lifting up. I'm curious, how do those conversations look? Are we trying to get everyone in the room, or is it we're pulling insights here and we're cataloging it and trying to put the dots together to help predict, there are these job opportunities that are available. There are going to be more of these opportunities. How do we create stand-up curriculum or a new program to help support economic mobility for our students who may find an interest in this work? Is that maybe kind of how that looks, or some variation?
It's a little bit more complex than that, but I think as a regional consortium and having the opportunity for the Chancellor's Office to fund the operation of the consortium, we're able to intentionally do that work by looking at not only data, but what our employers are saying about the type of positions and opportunities and the growth in the job market. So what we've done as a regional consortium, and this is an expectation statewide from the Chancellor's Office, is that we have our regional plan and we have identified the top 8 priority sectors. And all the work that we support as a regional consortium is data-driven, right? And it's ever evolving because even within the industries that we've identified, AI and automation has also shifted the way in which skill development is important. So it's always ever evolving, but we are focused on supporting our colleges, supporting our K-12 partners, and bringing in workforce boards and industry and universities to be able to look at those identified high growth need areas and also the gaps and opportunities so that we can have conversation about streamlined systems and an approach where we're going to build a talent pipeline within our educational institutions, but also the output is job placement and career development and mobility for our students. So one example I can give you is our Nursing 2035 initiative. And I don't know if you read about that, but that's on our website. And this is a partnership that we work with the actual CSU system. And one of our presidents in the region spearheaded this initiative with the CSU system leader. And we've been able to bring together not only workforce industry partners, but educators across public, private sectors to talk about the nursing shortage. And it's not about more graduates. It's really assessing what are those challenges? What are the bottlenecks? How can we as a full ecosystem be able to navigate that to fill the nursing shortage? And sometimes we think about, if we have more graduates, it'll solve the problem. And that's not always the case. And each one of us has a critical role in making sure we fill these gaps, we fill these opportunities, and we have a responsibility to our learners to ensure that we're providing them pathways to prosperity and not just education. And I think we sometimes forget that, and we're either pushing transfer or 4-year, then it shifts. Then it's how do we really, really prepare our students for not only their next step, but for their careers. And it might look different for every learner. It might be a different time for each of our learners. They could be coming in as adult learners. They could be coming in with a lot of experience. And we want to be able to provide them credit for that and acknowledge that so that we can expedite their completion as well.
Thank you for sharing that. Across your 19 community colleges, is it a balance of young people coming straight out of high school, people coming back as adult learners? It's what's the student it's like?
Yeah, we see a lot more adult learners now. We have, a lot of reskilling and upskilling. But we also are, as a state, we're really encouraging credit for prior learning so that we could have not only our veteran communities, but other adult learners be able to come back into the system and get acknowledged for the work and expedite their completion and be able to go up the career ladder. And of course, dual enrollment and high school enrollment and early college credits, those are all areas that our consortium focuses on. And we all actually also provide K-12 strong workforce funding to our districts to encourage CTE K-14 alignment with our community colleges. So there's a lot of work that happens within not only connecting adult learners, but also our high school students to early college credits, as well as our graduates who may be joining us to transfer or maybe in a career path from high school and beyond.
I want to, you said so many things that I'm like, I have to come back to this. I have to come back to that. But I don't want to lose this one for those who are listening who may not be familiar. I was really impressed by the credit for prior learning work that you all are leading. Can you share more about that and what that looks like?
So as a regional consortium, we invested in strong workforce regional funds, and we actually supported our 19 colleges to really assess what do they need at their local institution to build a team that could push this work forward. And then statewide in California, the MAP initiative is also articulating all of these courses and streamlining them into the MAP articulation database. So what this means is that it's faculty-led. So any courses that potentially students who have experience that come in, there is an articulation with that course, and that way they get credit for it, so they don't have to take that actual course. So it's basically giving them credit for prior learning, but there's a lot of work that goes into that. And unless you have built that infrastructure, you're not able to provide those academic credits for students who have gained that learning outside of a classroom. And that could be work experience, military, industry certificates, employer training, any type of validated learning. And the reason why it's so important is, one, I mentioned it earlier, it really reduces the degree certificate time. It lowers costs. It prevents credit loss and repetition. It accelerates that entry into that higher wage job. And it also benefits all of our adult learners that are coming to us with this experience. So as a region, we actually developed an implementation and expansion guide that actually has been utilized worldwide now, because we're tracking who's downloading the guide, to really help support the implementation and the team collaboration and building the infrastructure in a college, in an educational institution, to be able to do this work and move this work forward. And recently with our MAP colleagues from the Chancellor's Office, we actually held a convening for our 19 colleges. We had 175 of our colleagues in a room together doing this work and actually submitting courses for articulation, which was very, very exciting. So this is just one way in which we could help our learners. And this is learner-centered. This is the way in which education needs to move forward, because we can't be constantly thinking about the Carnegie units and seat time and so on and so forth, because you know what? That's not what works. Yeah. And we really need to shift. And unless we're honest with ourselves, unless we really identify who we're here to serve, then we'll continue to do things status quo and it won't change.
Wow. Yeah, that is, I think that's so important, the work that you're doing. And I can see the reason why so many people are downloading it around the world from different institutions. I know there's a lot of conversation on how do we support our veterans when they come home with work experience that could transfer to some version of credits or things like that. So I am curious about that. What does that even look like? Can you maybe go a little deeper on that? Like, what infrastructure is needed to take the work or experiences that a veteran comes home with, and how do we transfer that into to credit for prior learning?
So that is all done through the institutions themselves. And we have veteran centers that provide resources and support. But now there's a lot of conversation about ensuring that their experiences and their real work experience outside of a classroom gets the credit, so that we can better support their career growth and mobility and education pathway. And so that has kind of grown larger, and now it's looking at all different types of industry sectors and CTE programs that do have similar alignment to providing credit for prior learning, whether it's their work experience, whatever that may be, whether they're an EMT and, they have hours, or whether it's nursing, so on and so forth. So, but our campuses do have veteran centers, and they support our veterans with multiple wraparound services. And also credit for prior learning has become a huge initiative. And the Chancellor's Office actually had a veteran sprint recently to get more courses articulated as well.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's something that's necessary, and that's good. That's good for all of us to figure that out. That Center for the Credit for Prior Learning. Now, I know with your experience, you're studying, looking for the edge, the most innovative systems. And I know with that being said, you told me you spent some time with the Swiss apprenticeship model at the CMET Institute. Is that right? Did I say it correctly? Can you share some of the insights that you learned while you were there?
Yeah, absolutely. I was fortunate enough to be invited as part of the SoCal delegation to go to the CMET's Education Reform Institute in Zurich, Switzerland, this past June, actually. What am I saying? July. And it was a pretty intense institute, but it is definitely the gold standard. And it is a way where we could really align our education system to ensure that it is employer-led and supported rather than the other way around. So we have a tendency where employers are part of advisories and so on and so forth. And if you really look at the Swiss model, it's very permeable, which means that learners can enter and exit at any point into any pathway opportunity they want. And one of the key things that's really, really important is they start their students in apprenticeships early on. So by the time students are 15, 16, they're already identifying an area where they want to study and career path they might want to explore, and they're placed in an apprenticeship. So it's very learner driven, and it's not about 4-year degrees. It's not about I want to do more research. It's not about I want to go into CTE pathways. It's about early career exploration and strength identification. And we talk about interest surveys and helping our students do career assessments. And there's multiple of those out there that as counselors and as educators, we have our students do. What they do is early on, they help students identify their strengths and the areas of interest they have, and really, really help them to support going into these real world experiences. And they recognize that hands-on support is way more important than seat time in a classroom. Yeah. And again, their system is very much career focused, career ready, employer supported, but that's a countrywide kind of initiative, right? And so for us in our system, we're very much about transcripts and graduation requirements and A through Gs. And are you going to go to a 2-year versus a 4-year? And you might have an opportunity to do an internship, or you might have an opportunity to do some level of work-based learning. Over there, it's a given. Every student has the same opportunity, and every student has the same access to entering and exiting education, and also re-entering as they see fit for their career journeys. So I think it was really, really, really important. One of the key things that I think I took away from that is we have to reframe the way in which our education is. And they call it a reform because it truly is identifying what are the challenges, where are there disconnected opportunities that we could really look at, and where are there opportunities for our employers to define competencies and credentials and help us navigate what is truly needed in our programs. So be co-designers with us rather than an afterthought in our education system.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I was really impressed by that. The entering and exiting, and it not being a negative thing is, I think that was the point that really stood out to me when you were sharing that. Can you talk more about that? Because, that's so not the way we do things here in our American education system. But can you share more about that, the exploration of entering and exiting?
Yeah. And I think, for us, and, I could speak for us in California, there's always a stigma of like what you do next, right? And, whether you decide to go into the workforce or you decide to there's always that stigma. And over there isn't. There is no end goal. And I think that's the key piece. There is no end goal. The end goal is not graduation requirement. The end goal is not a 4-year degree. The end goal is not a 2-year degree. What they took pride on is really providing pathways and opportunities for students to be able to do what's next for them. And one of the key pieces of the success and what I was just amazed at is the maturity of their apprentices. And when we went to their site visits and were able to talk to apprentices, the level of confidence and the belief in themselves that they could do it at 15 was amazing. And then the level of support that failure is okay. And the level of mentorship by their supervisors was just extraordinary. And I think it's just an entire system that needs to support our youth and be able to mentor them to understand that, yeah, there are challenges. There are points where we're not going to be successful, but here's opportunities and ways in which we could get better. Here's ways in which we can build on our skills. And that was a critical piece of it, is because you can't just place a student in a program. You can't just place a student in an internship and hope for the best at that age. But the fact that they provided that mentorship and that support and the confidence of those students and the ability to say, hey, if we make a mistake, the only expectation is that we identify how we get better. And I don't know if we do that. And I know that we always protect our own children and as educators, our own students to not fail. And we don't want them to fail. And we want them to be successful in all aspects. But is that really teaching resiliency and adaptability and all of the skills that...
I feel like you're like in my head with my questions. I was going to actually ask you, as a parent and having that experience, how did that change your approach at all to like how you help support or guide your own kids?
Yeah, absolutely. And, my kids are in elementary and high school. So, of course, education is really, really critical as for many different reasons. But I do really stress to my kids, and just like I did as a counselor to my students, is there is a next step for everybody. Yeah. There will be a career opportunity for everybody. But unless we do the hands-on, unless we go into the field, unless we explore what our strengths are, unless we explore what we like to do and what our passions are, we're not going to be successful. You don't want to wake up being miserable. You want to wake up excited about what's next in your career, in your role. And so for my kids, I really, really encourage them to take the skills that they're good at and be able to elevate that. And of course, education, doing well in school, the critical thinking, the time management, the discipline, all of those pieces are really, really important when we talk about a holistic child. But I think it's also important to encourage them to start to think about ways in which they could really elevate and find their strengths and be able to navigate that. And, one of my sons is like totally into finance. He loves the stock market, trading and all that. And he started that during COVID time because they were learning virtually and he had a lot of time, and he's actually good at it. And he has that entrepreneur mindset of like, what business can we buy and sell? And, what can we, and I encourage my students my children to do that because it's such a critical piece of their growth, and they should be exploring and navigating that. And maybe it is for them and maybe it's not. Maybe they'll outgrow it. Maybe they won't. In addition to that, I think it's really, really important for our children and, young children to get work experience, to be able to do a job, because that discipline and that commitment and that responsibility teaches so much more than anything else. So, I'm one of those parents where it's like, yes, you'll get a college degree. Absolutely. But you also need to have the skills, have the critical thinking, navigate the AI tools and automation that is out there. And they do a better job than I do for sure. But they're in a whole different world now. So.
Yeah, no, that's good. I always think it's good to see, whenever we can, see education systems in other countries, because it helps to maybe reinforce some of the things we're doing, or to make us challenge and say like, like if we add a little more of this, so I appreciate your perspective on there. And then you're talking about your sons, being great with AI, but you wrote the book on AI. Okay. So tell me, how are you seeing shift priorities across different industries, whether from the research from your book or from your conversations with employers or industry leaders?
Yeah. So I'll start with the book. And part of the reason why I decided to write the book was because in the counseling program that I teach in, I was actually teaching students how to use AI in specific units within the course. And so really embedding those tools as opportunity for them to see the potential of more one-on-one time for their students. Because we know counselor caseloads are huge across California. And so I was thinking in my mind, how do we really leverage these tools for student services and for counseling, but not lose that human-centered approach and not lose the purpose of being in this position, being a counselor. So really being able to help support them in this kind of moment of change and not be passive users of that technology, but really remain leaders as counselors. So it's a really quick read, practical tools, how to really get the student voice engaged, how to really use AI responsibly and ethically and strategically, because there is bias in the tools as well. And so really truly having conversation with the counselors about the biases within the tools and how to navigate that. And so I know that, education should never feel automated, or the students experiencing should never be automated. And I know that innovation really matters, but humanity matters more. And I really wanted to have this quick tool guide for counselors to pick up. And wherever they were with AI, however comfortable they felt with it, that they were able to navigate this new normal and be able to use the tools to help support their students and to also find more time to do individual one-on-one face-to-face counseling rather than that routine, whether it's checking transcripts or reviewing students' histories for specific, intervention and prevention tools. And so there's so many ways in which AI can support that. And I really wanted just to have a tool out there for the field to utilize, but also be very human-centered and really focused on who we're serving. And then in my work with LARC, we have an AI task force, and I co-lead that with one of our program managers, Judy Fox. And it has grown to be this exceptional task force that not only guides us with what is needed, but it also has supported us to offer 30 plus professional development opportunities in our region for all of our stakeholders, whether they're faculty, staff, community members. In addition to that, we've done a few industry-specific sector professional development trainings for AI, so that our individuals, for example, in manufacturing or healthcare or retail hospitality, know how AI is going to impact the industry and how we can better support our students. Because AI is going to be and I think is a transferable skill that all employers and all industries will need. And at some point, we have to all acknowledge that and be able to move forward with how do we better support not only our faculty and our teachers who are doing the day-to-day with our students, but also our students so that they're using the tools ethically and responsibly. The guardrails sometimes aren't there. And so how do we really educate our students to be able to navigate that as well?
Yeah, that's very well said. And I appreciate you ushering that work in for the counselors. That could be a group, or it is a group that is both at that human, that high touch point, but the workload can be so much that's put on them that I do see the opportunities where AI can help supercharge some of the work to maybe even be more productive, efficient, and manage those touch points even better. And then also it's just going so fast right now. It's moving. It's like it's not once a quarter. It's like not once a month. It's like every week there's something new that is a game changer. And it's like, how does this apply to your work or to your industry? Or for educators listening, like how does this impact what we're teaching? The relevancy of it all and the connection to it. So I'm grateful that you all have that task force.
Yeah. And one of the good things about having the task force is there's so many tools out there. And like you said, it's ever evolving, changing. Then there's a new version and a new one out there. And so also the State Chancellor's Office has provided our colleges with so many great tools. And it's how do we really help support the field to be able to utilize it in an effective way? Because we can put all the tools out there. It's the user that matters. And so this has given us the opportunity to really have real, honest conversation of like, these are all great, but in a practical setting, what is missing? What do we need? And these are the things that we've identified with the task force. And these are the areas that we're helping to support. And we recently just offered a 4-week CTE faculty AI training with badges each week. Through the Canvas instructor shell that we utilize for our faculty across the state. And so our faculty actually got to develop syllabi that have AI tools in there and really be able to navigate that. And so we supported over 100 faculty members to do that, which was really, really exciting as well. So just trying to bring in more resources and support, because I always ask the question, okay, now what? How is that changing the way in which we're doing our work day to day, whether it's teaching students or our own workflows? And I think that's a critical piece that we can help support. And our AI task force has done such a great job with that piece as well. But it's on our website, so all of your listeners can take advantage of it. We record them and post them on our website. So all of the PDs are available.
That's so great that you're leaning in on that, because as you know, depending on who you're listening to, some education systems are still shying away from it when it's not going away. So I think it is the responsible thing to do for those who are in leadership and stewards of systems and institutions to find the right way to incorporate it where it makes strategic sense to use it. I want to talk two things before I let you go. I want to hear more about the K-14 program that you all are leading and the connection between that and those 19 campuses.
Yeah. So as a regional consortium, we actually have an infrastructure for CTE K-14 alignment. And what that means is the state has invested in K-12 pathway coordinators. And these are individuals that are actually hosted at our districts, at our K-12 districts that serve their community college region. And so we have 11 in our region that serve our 11 community college districts. In addition to that, our regional consortium, fortunately, utilizing strong workforce funds, has also invested in one career pathway specialist at each of our colleges. So we have a leader in our K-12, we have a leader in our community colleges, and they work together to really bridge that gap and be able to create meaningful CTE K-14 pathway alignment. And this includes dual enrollment opportunities, early college credits, so on and so forth. And so we have a really strong infrastructure where this work can get done. And so when we talk about our districts and when we talk about funding, then we also have our K-12 strong workforce funding, which is the purpose of that is K-14 alignment, CTE alignment, and really being able to provide those opportunities. And so through coordinated regional planning with colleges and K-12 partners, we offer dual enrollment institutes. Our career pathway specialists meet quarterly with our pathway coordinators and really help support our students, because we know we have a lot of first generation, historically underserved learners in our region, so that they can actually transition more seamlessly from high school to post-secondary education and also be able to utilize the workforce programs. So it really reduces the barriers for entry. It shortens the time for credentials if they're doing dual enrollment while they're in high school. And in some of our high schools, early college credits and programs actually give them an associate degree by the time they graduate. So it's really, truly kind of leveling out that playing field and making equitable participation in college and career pathways. And that specifically is tied to regional labor market opportunities. So it's very data driven as well.
I just love the continuity of like the industry workforce, the education system, like the state, the funding for things, the dual credit opportunities, the reskilling, the upskilling connected to, data of careers and jobs that are needed in the marketplace. It really is an example of best practices. The only other place I like personally, I was doing, the keynote for the summer CTE conference in South Dakota. And it was a similar connection where the community college worked with the schools and the dual credit to the collaboration with the 4-year institutions all the way up to the governor's office. So it can be done. And so that's part of the reason why I really wanted to have you on, is to lift that up for leaders who are struggling with that. They're fighting each other instead of trying to figure out how we can work together, which in the long run is to the economic benefit and to the civic benefit of the local communities, or the state.
Yeah. And, we're fortunate in California because we have our Vision 2030, which is the roadmap from the state chancellor's office. We have K-16 collaboratives. We have California Jobs First. We have the CTE master plan, right? But the end goal is all the same. And I think as a regional consortium, we have the opportunity here. And I take that opportunity and that responsibility to make sure that we really build a system that aligns all those efforts. And regardless of what the compliance mechanism is or the metric is, for me, this is an opportunity for us to really collaborate and build a system and infrastructure that really works for the learner, and really taking advantage of all these different ways in which we can engage to truly make an impact. And I think that's a critical piece that, I truly take pride in, because I don't want to just talk about the future of education. I want to make sure that we are really building it in a way that works, and we're aligning systems that work for our learners.
So powerful. All right, last question. Okay. I ask this to all of my guests. What is your vision for the future of career and technical education?
Great question. So when I think about the future of CTE, I don't actually think about programs first. I think about systems, because the future of CTE isn't just about expanding career pathways. It's really about redesigning education so pathways actually lead somewhere. And so for so long, CTE has been treated as a track inside of education. And in the future, CTE becomes a backbone and how education connects to economic mobility. And the strongest systems globally, we talked about Switzerland, there's Germany, increasingly there's regional models in the US that really don't treat vocational education as secondary. And they don't treat CTE as secondary. They treat it as an economic infrastructure. And so employers co-designing programs, credentials, signaling real labor market value, and learners moving smoothly from curiosity to competence to career without hitting institutional walls. That's where CTE is going. And we really need to move away from program-based CTE to ecosystem-based talent systems, from advisory boards to employer co-ownership, from completion metrics to wage and mobility outcomes, to isolated credentials, to really stackable industry-validated pathways. And of course, technology will play a critical role. AI, labor market analytics, predictive advising. But the real shift isn't technological, in my opinion, it's structural. And this future of CTE is regional. It's not one college. It's not one school district, not one workforce agency. It needs to really be a coordinated talent ecosystem where K-12, college, 4-year universities, employers regional partners really operate as one pipeline instead of separate institutions. Because ultimately, our students don't enroll in CTE programs. They enroll in a future. And the future of CTE will be measured by one thing. Did this pathway really lead to real economic mobility? And if the answer is yes, then CTE becomes the most powerful engine of opportunity in modern education.
Wow. I mean, you just dropped the mic right there. That was that may have been one of the best answers that I've heard. I love that. I just offer you gratitude in this moment. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. I know you have a very busy schedule, so I don't take that for granted. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and insights with our learning community. If anyone would like to learn more about your personal insights, your books, where should they go? And if they would like to learn more about LARC, where would you direct them?
So they can all go to losangelesrc.org, and my email and my information is there as well. Feel free to reach out. And Sylvester, thank you for the impactful work that you do day to day, and the meaningful work that you do with our community here as well. And thank you for the opportunity and for having me on your podcast.
Thank you. All right, if you enjoyed this episode, don't be selfish. Share it with a friend who needs to hear these insights and gems that were dropped today. Until the next episode, remember, you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Global CTE Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to be the first to know about future episodes.